In this Elden Ring Nightreign video, we're going to be taking a look at Revenant, and we'll explore in this video how to play her, what her stats are, what her skills are, how to unlock her first of all so that you know how to get her very quickly, and we'll also give some information on her remembrance quests. So if you've been looking for some information on these things, watch on to find out. Revenant's gameplay revolves around managing a group of summons that both attack enemies and keep them distracted while you sort of work in the background casting devastating incantations and occasionally step in and finish off enemies with melee attacks. Since she's very squishy, staying away from enemies is usually a good idea, so the challenge of her gameplay is FP recovery and mapping out exactly where to go to make sure that you get the gear that you need when you're doing a run with her. To make your life easier, I won't repeat tips from our beginner's guide, but if you're just starting out and you want a better understanding of the game overall, make sure to check out that video to save yourself hours of frustration. Revenant can be unlocked after you reach the Round Table Hold. Find the small jar Bazaar and purchase the item Besmirched Frame for 1500 Merc. Once you've purchased this item, open your map and you'll notice a new exclamation mark next to a character icon in the Round Table Hold near the sparring grounds. If you approach this area, you'll see a ghostly figure and get the option to interact with it. Doing so will commence a gameplay section where you must fight the Revenant and all her summons at once, which can be challenging for a lower HP class like Recluse or Duchess. I recommend you use one of the easier classes like Wilder, Iron Eye, or Raider. My strategy for this fight was to just focus on Revenant and run around in a way to lure her summons further while dodging her incantation discs. She doesn't have a lot of health, so you deal quite a lot of damage two-handing or using the uppercut skill of the weapon. If this does not work well for you, you can try taking out summons first and positioning yourself so Sebastian, the giant skeleton, can't get you with his powerful ultimate. Once you complete the fight, you'll be able to play as her immediately by selecting her in Round Table Hold. You can also begin her personal quest, the Revenant Remembrance, as soon as you start. This remembrance is straightforward. You simply begin it from the journal and talk to the Guardian, but he will then immediately task you with defeating a Night Lord, which can be daunting when you first start. The full quest details are on the wiki, but I recommend completing all remembrances as soon as possible, as they unlock special chalices, relics, and outfits for your character. Next, we'll take a look at the stats of Revenant, including her HP, FP, stamina, and her scaling stats. Revenant begins with some of the lowest HP of the whole group with a poor D rating, shared only by the Recluse. This means you have a measly 200 HP to work with, and you can go down easily if you don't stay with your group and use your summons well. You have a decent amount of FP at 80, and you have some stamina at 54 to work with, giving you an immediate hint that you're meant to stay away from danger. Revenant is a master of faith, enjoying the highest rating in the game at S, tied only with Recluse. This means that incantations and faith-based weapons are what you should be focusing on, and you'll be able to generate a lot of damage with them when using them. Revenant has poor strength, dexterity, and has some decent intelligence and arcane, allowing her to use a variety of elemental-based weapons. However, focusing on using incantation casting and finding weapons that scale with faith is ideal. Next, we'll take a look at Revenant's skills before we get into some of her equipment and relic suggestions. Her passive ability is called Necromancy, and what this passive does is that it sometimes raises an enemy when you defeat them. It's not all the time, it seems like it has a chance to happen, but from my testing, it seems like you must deal the killing blow for this to happen, so if you're playing in a party, they should be aware, or if you're playing in a party with Revenant, you should be aware, and let Revenant finish off weak enemies whenever possible, particularly the ones that spawn before the end of day boss, as the wave of adds here can become quite the small army of summons that can aid your team when you go into the boss fight itself, and these can get aggro and deal damage, which can be really, really helpful. While initially confused about this mechanic, I eventually found it to be surprisingly useful, especially when you discover you can raise ghosts of field bosses and area bosses to help you, so definitely make sure you're getting the killing blow on everything to maximize the chances of getting minions to help you. Next, we'll take a look at her character skill called Summon Spirit, and what this does is it allows her to strum her lyre, and when she does this, she can summon one of 3 ghosts, basically, and each of these ghosts have different attributes and stats and do different things, but you can only have one of them out at once, and they each have their own health pool, so as they take damage, they're going to get closer and closer to death, and if you summon one and then move a far enough distance away, it'll disappear and you'll have to resummon it. Doesn't cost FP to do this or anything, but you will have to resummon these when you move from boss to boss or area to area. Note too that these phantoms can actually help revive downed allies if you're targeting them and a phantom is near them. They'll actually attack them and try and pick them up from the ground. So next, let's take a look at what these phantoms are and how they operate. Helen is the first one. She is sort of a fast dexterity summon who uses a rapier to do thrusting attacks and has quick footwork to evade enemy incoming attacks. She's also much faster at getting to enemies and bosses than any of your other phantoms. This is my go-to summon for most forts and small locations and the start of boss fights. She's not very tanky, so she will be defeated rather quickly by the day bosses, but she can follow them a lot better and can also help dealing with adds when they are up. In general, this would be your most used summon. If you use your ultimate, Helen will also use her special skill that does several quick thrusting attacks in a row, faster than her usual ones. Next is Frederick, and Frederick is a much heavier ally using a large bone great hammer to deal blunt damage to enemies with overhead slams and AoE swipes that can hit many targets at once. He is quite tanky, and while slower than Helen, is effective enough to chase some bosses around the arena and successfully get their attention, becoming a de facto tank for your party sometimes. This makes him ideal for summoning in areas with many enemies packed together in small spaces, or as a midway summon when dealing with night bosses. His ultimate activates when you use yours, and it's a series of 360 AoEs using his large hammer, which will hit a large boss several times. Lastly is Sebastian. Your last summon is also your most powerful one. The giant skeleton spawns slightly to the left of your starting position and will not move from this location, using a low damage AoE roar to get enemy attention, and then delivering massive overhead slams with his fists and frontal AoE damage with his arms. It has a special ultimate that activates when you do your ultimate art, producing a black stream of damage that works incredibly for flinching and damaging even the largest bosses. This summon should be your go-to when doing the Night Lords, but it can be hard to get the boss to focus on him since he doesn't move, and he can end up away from the fight. It's thus best to summon him and activate the ultimate at the right time so you can get the most out of it. Last is the ultimate skill, Immortal March. This is your ultimate technique that builds up by doing damage and attacking, as well as slightly builds up over time. It can be a rather underwhelming skill when you first start playing Revenant, as you don't have the understanding of when best to use it, but it's eventually going to be responsible for some of the best clutch saves of your games. This skill will first make you and the party immortal for a limited time via the effect Temporary Invulnerability, which lasts about 15 seconds. If anyone is killed during this effect, their health will instead be 0, making it perfect for the boss burn needed when they're at really low health. The other thing this will do is make your active summons execute their ultimate abilities, so it can be strategic to do this early and late in a Night Lord fight. The Revenant Remembrance Relics influence this skill and make it more powerful, so make sure to do this quest as soon as possible. Before we get into relics though, you should know that all characters have more than one container to perform rites in. Doing your Remembrance quests unlocks the Revenant Chalice, which gives you a new color combination to use on this character. There are other additional chalices to be gained from completing the quest, completing the final boss, and for purchase at the Small Jar Bazaar. Make sure you purchase them all and any special relics that show up there to optimize your choices. A full list of all chalices and relics can be found on the wiki. I personally use the Revenant's Chalice the most, which provides blue, green, and any color. This is available by progressing the character quest, as are the best relics for the game. When playing Revenant, your relics play a very important role for your character. Since you're an incantations-focused player, FP management is quite important, but unfortunately, there are quite limited options in terms of relics that you can use. You can try equipping some of these, but a lot of them are melee-heavy weapons focused to regain FP, so I tend to purchase Starlight Shards before the last boss run in order to have extra FP in this fight. For the Starter Chalice, you should focus on increasing HP, Mind, and Faith. This will help you die less, as well as give you more damage and more FP to play with. You can also try and get increases to incantation groups that you like, such as Black Flame spells or Dragon Cold spells. Erdtree incantations can also be useful for bosses who are weak to Holy as well, so you can customize what relics you're using depending on what boss you're fighting. Of course, a lot of the relics you'll get will be up to chance, so you can't guarantee any of these things, so you may be using ones that you aren't ideal originally until you can find better ones. For the Revenant Chalice, you should make full use of the Revenant-specific relics that you get. My endgame combination is Old Portrait, a Tranquil Scene rune that gives buff to Dragon Cold incantations, and the Small Makeup Brush. Old Portrait is a no-brainer, giving you a Ghost Flame explosion when you do your ultimate, plus you're using your HP to fully heal nearby allies when you trigger, and makes enemies fill up your gauge faster. The Small Makeup Brush applies 2 unique effects, continuous HP recovery, and more runes from defeating enemies. With these relics, you get a lot out of your ultimate, and it increases your performance during the whole run. Of course, you can customize to your playstyle, so I suggest you have a look at the relics page on the wiki to find effects that match your needs. As one of the lowest HP classes, your objective during the expedition is to find specific weapons that will give you the right incantations so you can stay at range and damage them without risking going down. You should search for great church locations, and there are always 2 on every expedition map. Here you will find either a boss above ground or an underground passageway leading to a subterranean boss. The underground churches are always better, as there is a chest that will guarantee sacred seals. Like all classes, you should be aware that you can find corpses of fellow players around the map and get their loot, so use the group password Fextra to increase your chances of finding well-geared remains to help you along. Ideally, your first run will begin by clearing the first camp right in front of you and getting to level 2 at a nearby site of grace, and then going straight to a location like the Great Church to get yourself some powerful incantations. Lightning Spear and Black Flame are my favorites to get early on, but I have also been successful with Flame Sling. Traditionally, powerful dragon incantations like the Dragon Breaths don't work as well as you'd expect because of the AoE mobility of bosses, although they can be amazing for triggering status ailments like Rotten Breath. However, the massive effects ones can be incredible, particularly Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, Burn O Flame, and Scarlet Aeonia. Check your Nightlord's weaknesses to pick the best element for your run, and make sure you get Starlight Shards so you can replenish FP during boss fights. Buying these at World Merchants is cheaper than at the last boss, so don't forget to pick some up if you see a merchant on the way. You can also opt for some melee weapons, but unless there's a holy location where you can get a holy-based weapon, you need things that scale with faith, so your options are rather limited by the default stats. The coated sword has S scaling and can be good, but it's a purple item, so you'll have to get this on day 2. The Clean Rot Spear has a C, but can act as a decent offhand and may be paired with an FP regen effect, and has enough range and motion that you're not full on in the action as something like the Gargoyle's Black Halberd would demand. Following the Revenant's Cursed Claws that you start with, you can also use the Cypher Pada as it has S scaling and holy damage, but it's also purple, so harder to drop. Bows and shields are not really for this character, but you can pick some up if the random buffs are what you need. In terms of passive effects to look for on gear, you want to look for the following. Increased HP that grants continuous or unique HP recovery on kill, Sacred Ground when low HP, or improved flask regen, etc. Anything that increases FP or grants you FP from killing enemies or attacking enemies, reduced FP cost for spells, increased casting speed, raises potency, duration, or effective incantations and charged incantations, anything that improves attack power or affinity attack power for like Holy or Fire if you're using those, or Lightning, negates damage or improves damage negation including under conditions such as being hit, and anything that makes you less likely to be targeted so that you don't have aggro. And don't forget to get talismans as well. These usually drop from scarabs around the map that are in fixed locations that you can memorize over time, or you can always get the guaranteed talisman from the center castle inside the locked area in the chest there. This requires beating a sometimes tough boss, so you usually do this on day 2, but you can get a purple talisman out of it. Talismans you want to look for are anything that raises FP and MP, and of course Erdtree's Favor. Faithful Canvas Talisman will improve incantations, Primal Glintstone Blade reduces FP cost, Radagon Icon improves spell casting speed, Godfrey Icon improves charged spell damage, Scorpion Charms matching your best spell will improve its damage, Assassin's Cerulean Dagger can regen FP when you do a critical hit, and Ancestral Spirit's Horn can regen FP when defeating enemies. When it comes to party composition, the Revenant really fits into any party because their summons do a lot of the tanking and damage, and if you can get the right incantations and weapon effects and talismans, you can also deal fantastic damage. So you can do a lot of support and off-tanking while also dealing fantastic damage at the same time, which few characters can do. My personal favorite party compositions for Revenant are Guardian, Revenant, and Duchess, or Duchess, Iron Eye, and Revenant. And one final tip for you Revenant players out there is that you can actually heal your summons with the heal spell that you begin with at the beginning of the game and any other healing type spells that you pick up that are AoE in nature. So make sure you use that heal spell if your summons is weak and if it needs healing in order to help keep it alive so it can keep tanking for you and doing damage. And that's a great way to prevent it from, outright dying and having a cooldown before you can resummon it again. So that wraps up our Revenant video. I hope you guys found these tips helpful. She is a super fun class to play, but can be very difficult for new players, especially if you don't know the mechanics of the game very well, and she's very hard to play solo in my experience. However, if you have other tips about Revenant, you can leave them in the comments, or further questions, leave them there as well, and I will try and answer them as soon as I can.